Well, I want to talk about gluten intolerance today. It was even on one of the network TVs. They had a whole big thing on gluten and all the movie stars and athletes who were affected by it. And right now, according to, actually it was 2009, according to Mayo Clinic, a big international clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, they said 30 out of 100, just about one-third of Americans are gluten intolerant. Now, we're talking about 115 million Americans, a huge market, 115 million Americans, and you're looking at 30 million baby boomers are gluten intolerant. And then when you look at certain cultural or ethnic groups, the Seventh-day Adventists are 80% gluten intolerant, the Mormons are 80% gluten intolerant, and the Amish are 80% gluten intolerant because they eat so much grain. Now, I urge you to get a hold of my CD called Cereal Killers, spelled C-E-R-I-A-L. It's a contraction of two words, cereal, like C-E-R-E-A-L, the cereal you eat for breakfast, and then cereal, S-E-R-I-A-L, like serial killers, people who kill people every week kind of thing. So once you get a hold of that CD, Serial Killers, once you get a hold of the book Hell's Kitchen, and that'll give you a lot of references, it'll give you a lot of information we just don't have time for in this monologue. But it's a serious problem. And not only do you get from gluten intolerance, it's not an allergy to wheat. When you're gluten intolerant, you're actually sensitive. You're intolerant of wheat, barley, rye, and oat proteins, not in an allergic fashion. You don't get the same biochemical activities that happen when you have an allergy. It's kind of like more like a contact dermatitis when you roll around naked in a patch of poison ivy. You're not allergic to poison ivy, but you sure are going to be intolerant of it. Well, the same thing happens when you eat gluten from wheat, barley, rye, and oats, or drink it in beer, scotch, and bourbon, or any other alcohol drinks, or any drinks that are made from wheat, barley, rye, and oats. Your intestines are going to look like you've been eating poison ivy for salads. And so a lot of doctors will call this leaky gut syndrome, and a lot of people will get called celiac disease. It'll be called irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, appendicitis, diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, the most severe form, where they want to start amputating chunks of your intestine. They will take out your appendix, they'll take out your gallbladder because of belly pain. Colicky babies have the symptoms. And then secondarily to this, you can get any one of hundreds of diseases that are nutritional deficiency disease, because when your intestines change negatively like this, it reduces your ability to absorb things by as much as 80 to 90%. And you get all these diseases. You might have 25, 30, 40, 50 diseases, all caused by malabsorption of nutrients. Of course, the doctors say, well, you have an autoimmune disease, your body's attacking itself. You have a genetic disease, which is passed on from generation to generation. Of course, gluten intolerance is passed on through women, not through men. It's not a genetic thing. So men don't contribute to passing it on, but they can get it from their mother, either through cord blood or through breast milk. Same way with girls. The girls pass it on because they will expose the embryo to cord blood, of course, and then they expose the embryo or the newborn baby to breast milk. So in either case, they're going to initiate gluten intolerance in the embryo or the newborn baby. So this is something you have to be aware of. So some of the more common symptoms that people get or diseases they get when in the earliest stages of gluten intolerance, we're talking things like colicky babies. Take the baby off the breast milk and you put them on a formula. Hey, boy, they're happy because they're not getting the gluten through the mother's breast milk anymore. And then they start eating solid food again. Then they start getting belly pain. They don't want to go to school. And you think, oh, the kids, the teacher being bad to the kid. The kid's got belly pain. Mommy, I don't want to go to school. My belly hurts. The doctor takes their appendix out. They get a little older. They'll take their gallbladder out. Get a little older. They want to amputate chunks of their colon and their small bowels. And then you begin to gain weight because you're hungry all the time because you can't absorb minerals. And so you have pica and cribbing and the munchies because you're minerally deficient. And so you start eating more and more and more, and you can't absorb sugar and calories. As a result, it's not unusual for people who have gluten intolerance to be overweight. It's not always, just like always people who are overweight don't get diabetes. Just because you have a gluten intolerance and a malabsorption problem doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get overweight or stay thin. So it could be 50-50. You may have some people in your family who are overweight and some who are very thin, and they all have gluten intolerance. Then asthma is a very common result of gluten intolerance because the large fatty particles, things like essential fatty acids and cholesterol that are necessary to make the prostaglandins to keep your bronchi open, these things cannot be absorbed. and you can't manufacture the prostaglandins properly without the omega-3s, 6s, and 9s, the proper ratios. As a result, you get a high rate of asthma in people who are maybe chronic bronchitis or chronic colds or susceptibility to pneumonia every winter, because during the wintertime you're eating more, waffles and pancakes and toast and oatmeal and that kind of stuff during the wintertime. So it tends to be worse. People say, it's the dry air during the wintertime. No. You're going to get skin problems, eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, rosacea on your face, very typical of alcohol drinkers. They get rosacea on the face. And there's an ad where this guy with rosacea all over his face, he was kind of a chunky, geeky kind of guy, really maybe 50 pounds overweight, being kissed and loved all over by this beautiful drop-dead poster girl, cover girl. And she's just loving this guy, and he's just covered in rosacea all over his face because he's got a gluten intolerance. Now, they don't know that. They just think he's a geeky guy with rosacea.